My name is Darren, and today I'd like to show you how you can import your own samples into the Zendrum Stomp block using the reSTOMP application from Zendrum Studio. Now, before we begin, I'm going to be making a couple of assumptions. Assumption number one is that you've already opened your Stomp block and have access to the internal SD card. The first thing you're going to want to do is back up that card and keep the backup in a safe place. The second assumption is that you have samples to import, either your own or from a third party. The samples that I'll be using in this tutorial are free to download. It's a package called the SM Mega Reaper Drum Kit. It can be found at this site, and I'll link it below in the description. It's basically a 60s era Ludwig with a jazz festival snare. Many of the samples are very deep. It's a nice sounding kit, and it's a good place to get started if you don't already have some samples of your own. Now, before we begin, if you're going to be working with samples a lot, then I'd recommend copying the SD card over to your hard drive and working from that location. It's going to be much faster because SD cards are quite slow. Then when you're done, you can just copy everything back to the SD card. I've already copied the card onto my hard drive, so to begin, I'm going to browse over to that folder and use it as my target. It's now scanning the files. Everything is green, that means there's no files missing. If ever you see red, that means there's no files present for that instrument number. You can see it's automatically picked up the ZenEdit mapping for the Stomp block, so we have all the factory default instrument names and types. Now, I'm not going to override any of these sounds. I like them and I want to keep them. What I want to do is augment them by importing that Ludwig kit. I'm going to do that on bank B. That way I can keep the original Stomp block data on bank A, while my custom samples will go on to bank B. Bank B defaults to being blank. You have a blank canvas to work with, and you can put your samples in any order that you'd like. Let's begin with the kick, which I'll place as note number 1. I'll just double click the note here. This gets us into the sample importer. As you can see, there are no samples here yet. All the layers are empty. So let's go ahead and import our samples by clicking the import button. Now, as you may know, the Stomp block uses 16 layers for each instrument. These are spaced equally throughout the available 127 velocity values, from softest to loudest, spanning 8 levels each. We'll want to select the files for the kick here, sorted from softest to loudest. Chances are you won't have exactly 16 layers to import, and that's fine. If you have less than 16, then reSTOMP will spread them out to fill the gaps. You'll lose a bit of realism since there'll be less variation, but it'll work just fine. If you have more than 16, you can just go ahead and add them all. reSTOMP will go through and resample them at 16 equal spaces for you. In my case, I have 127 kick samples here, so I'll just drop them all here at once and let reSTOMP sort it out for me. These files are already in the proper sort order from softest to loudest, but if yours aren't, simply rearrange them with your mouse. Okay, now that we've selected the files to import, we click Next. reSTOMP will analyze the files, and then we're taken to step 2, which is where we can apply effects and preview the samples. This Play Crescendo button is very useful for quickly hearing all 16 levels. You can also click within the demo circle. Clicking at the center produces the loudest hit, and then they get softer as you go towards an edge. You should use effects sparingly, as they can increase the length and decay time of your samples. Having too many long samples playing at once on your Stomp block will start to affect polyphony, and you'll start to hear some sample tails being cut off. I'll just add a small bit of reverb here. First, I'll click on reverb and then enable it. I'll choose Cave Medium 1, which is pretty conservative, and maybe bring down the high cut a bit. Let's hear how that sounds now with the crescendo button. Not too shabby. Okay, let's click on Next, and then Finish to finalize the import. Now I'll just set the instrument name and type, and that's it for the kick. Now I'll go ahead and import the rest of the kit. I'll fast forward through all the boring bits. Alright, so there we have the entirety of the SM Mega Reaper kit imported into bank B of my Stomp block card, with plenty of slots open for additional instruments. One last thing I want to do here is export the mapping file so that I can use it in both the Stomp block editor and within ZenEdit. Whenever you change the instrument types or names in reSTOMP, it's automatically maintaining a mapping file behind the scenes that you can export to use in other apps. reSTOMP can also import mapping files that are in the ZenEdit format, so that's also an option, depending on your workflow. I'll just go up here to the card menu and select Export to then save the ZenEdit mapping file to disk. So that's just about it for reSTOMP as far as importing samples goes. I'll now copy the contents of my target directory back over to the SD card and then reinsert it into my stomp block. Next up, I'll show you how to use the map file we exported in the stomp block client and within ZenEdit. Alright, so now we're over in ZenEdit. To import the mapping, select View, Mapping Editor from the menu. Click the Folder button to open Finder or Explorer. Then just drop the file we exported from reSTOMP into this folder. You'll need to restart ZenEdit for the mapping file to be loaded. Now I'll change the mappings used for this user setup. I'm going to use channel 11 for bank B of the stomp block, and then click Apply. Let's use the kick from bank B. I'll right-click on one of my kick triggers to select them all, and change the channel to 11. And now launch the note picker and select the Ludwig. Done. So now this setup is using items from both banks of the stomp block. Channel 10 is the original payload on bank A, and channel 11 is anything we placed on bank B. I'll transmit these changes to my Zendrum and I'm good to go. Okay, now we're back in the stomp block editor where I can adjust the trims of the Ludwig kit just a bit. Just to recap, bank A still has the original stomp block payload, and now bank B has the Ludwig kit that we imported. Let's import our map file for bank B so I can see the correct instrument names. First, click on the Settings tab. Now click to add a new mapping. I'll select the mapping we previously exported. And now I'll set that as the mapping for bank B. Now if I switch back over to the Trims tab and select bank B, you can see that it displays correctly, and now I can start tailoring my mix. And that about wraps it up for this video. I hope I've demonstrated to you that importing custom sounds into your Zendrum stomp block is made really simple by the reSTOMP app. You also should now have a good idea of how reSTOMP integrates with the stomp block client and ZenEdit via the mapping files. If you have any questions about the process, please post them below in the comments, and thanks for watching.